9750. Now, here's Dan.
All right, here we are. It's 8 minutes past 3 o'clock on this, the 7th day of the month of December. Our number 5220750, 5220750. We're happy to welcome in the studio with us a candidate for governor on the Democratic ticket, Bob Poe. How are you, Bob?
Great, Dan. How are you?
Great to see you. Good to have you here in the studio. How's the campaign going?
It's great to be here. It's going really well.
Yeah.
My message is really about bringing Alaskans together and finding common ground and solving problems and getting something done. And I think really if you look at the last several years, we've got precious little done in this state.
Well, the evidence seems to be mounting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That jobs, or at least capital, investment capital from at least the oil industry, does seem to be taking a trip elsewhere.
Well, if you attended the RDC annual meeting, one company after the other stood up there and said, look, we're just businesses. We think like businesses.
Yeah.
We weigh all the investment options we have across the world, and frankly, right now, Alaska's not looking as attractive to us as other places.
Do you think the average Alaskan, though, is getting that message? I know that, you've got the little breakfasts and the lunches, all the business
the same
people,
800 people, right?
Same crowd, same message.
Yeah.
Does you walk through Fred Meyer and you walk through the gallows and you start asking people about how our state's doing? Are they going to say, well, we're taxing our way out of jobs? I mean, is that resonating?
Well, I think what happens is that folks say, well, of course they're saying they don't like higher taxes. I mean, who wouldn't say that? We'd all say that. And I think that's a rational reaction for the average Alaskan. I think what they do is sometimes miss the connection between the oil industry and how it affects their daily lives. So Scott Goldsmith from ICER has this great, simple analysis of our economy. He says that basically 1/3 of all the jobs in Alaska depend on oil and gas. Full multiplier effect, the money spent at the drugstore that, employs the druggist and so forth. Another third is federal spending, and that's not related to Ted Stevens. That's related to 5 major military bases, owning 2/3 of the national park land, 59% of a place as big as Alaska. That kind of land ownership comes with a lot of responsibility. And then 1/3 is everything else you can think of: air cargo, fishing, tourism, mining, what have you. But 90% of state government and 57% of local government is also paid for by oil. So not only does it represent 1/3 of the jobs, but basically all of state government and most of local government. So when you think about that, it's oil that allows us to enjoy the tax regime that we do. And I don't think that's the thing that the average Alaskan gets.
Now, I can hear people in their cars driving, listening to you talk, thinking to themselves, no, wait a minute. Dan introduced this guy as a Democrat. He must have misspoke. You don't sound like a Democrat.
Well, before January, I was a nonpartisan, and 54% of Alaska is nonpartisan. I've always been a fiscal conservative, but on social issues, I am a Democrat.
Yeah.
But I don't think Republicans or Democrats have a monopoly on good, clear thinking. I think what we need is really, rather than to vote for a Republican or a Democrat, what we need to do is vote for a candidate who can basically bring Alaskans together, find common ground, solve problems, and get something done.
You're more of a Democrat in the vein of a Tony Knowles.
Definitely.
Pro-development, liberal on social issues.
Yeah, I say I'm pro-business, pro-development, pro-environment. What that means is that, we need a vital economy because that's where not only jobs come from, but also it supports social services and arts and education and all the other things that make this a good place. Resource development is at least going to be part of that. And I say I'm pro-environment because most Alaskans are here for the natural beauty. We're not all dreaming of a strip mine next to our house or something. We don't want to screw the place up.
Yeah.
And I just think that's true for most Alaskans I know.
If we get into a situation where you win the primary and Parnell wins the primary, on fiscal issues, we're going to have a Democrat to the right of the Republican.
Possibly, but I think I would portray myself a little differently. I think Governor Parnell is kind of locked into the Palin view that all our economic eggs should be in the one basket of AGEA, and that we should tax to the point that it might restrict investment. I don't know if that was the intention, but that seems to be the result. So what I would say is that I'm about economic development. You remember that three-legged stool I was talking about? Well, what I think we need to do is really be working on growing that third leg. So expanding air cargo services, building on Alaska-based tourism opportunities, more value-added seafood, that sort of thing, while not killing off oil, because oil is so important. It's such an important foundation to our economy.
The ConocoPhillips has said that they are not going to drill an exploratory well this year in Alaska. First time since 68, 69, something like that.
Yeah.
BP, they're cutting back. Contractors, you can hear across the state, talk to folks who belong to the alliance, which is the contractors.
Yep.
Not necessarily the industry, but the people who are hired by the industry. And they're just all very gloom and just it's bad news all the way around. If we don't change our path, if we don't reverse ACEs, if we don't dump the nonsense that is AGEA, where are we going to end up in 5 years?
Well, first, I won't go as far as to say we should just dump ACEs. But,
Amend.
But here's what I'll say. Every company we heard from and talked to at RDC was, and I agree with your statement that they're all gloom and doom. Nothing's really moving forward. We have to remember that there's about 68% of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline is full today, maybe even a little less. That's going to keep getting less the less investment you have.
Yeah.
Now, since it pays for 90% of state government and 57% of local government, the less that's in that pipeline, the less money there is to pay for things, and then sooner or later, your government starts to look for other taxpayers.
Yeah.
And who will those be?
You and me.
So, I think we really have to take a look at ACES and see, is it creating the impact that we hoped it would? And here's a sort of a telling thing that you don't hear brought up very much. When oil prices were down and Sarah Palin was still governor at the beginning of this year, they were offering up budget cuts. The very first budget cut that was offered up was the incentive money that had been set aside as a part of ACES to incentivize new exploration.
The money that they budgeted that was supposed to spur development.
Yeah, that all went away because
they didn't need it.
That nobody was using it.
Because ACES didn't work.
So it's a telltale sign.
Yeah.
And so I think what you really have to do is, again, I think we should be working on developing and diversifying our economy, but not deluding ourselves that that's going to replace oil. We got to keep oil going because it is the fundamental underpinnings to this whole shooting match that we get to enjoy here.
Bob Poe is here. He's running for Democrat in the Democrat primary. He's running against Hollis French and Ethan Berkowitz up to this point. Anyone else in the race?
Nope, that's it.
522-0750, 522-0750 if you'd like to talk to Bob. Let's go to David. David, you're on with Bob Poe.
Hey, Bob, I'm all for trying to rearrange AGEA. But I also don't want to lock in a contract with the producers for 40 years on taxes. I mean, that's outrageous what they want. Why can't they come to the table and say, you know what, 15 years, 20 years, but what they want is ridiculous, you know?
David, actually, some years ago when Governor Murkowski was talking about the gas pipeline and long-term guarantees, I wrote an op-ed where I suggested that tax certainty is something we all want, but what you do in any long-term contract is build in reopeners. And those are opportunities where either side can say every so often, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 years, to say, okay, we want to reopen 2 points of this agreement or 3 points of this agreement. That's done in labor contracts all the time, and I think any rational long-term contract would build that kind of stuff in.
But they don't want to budge to what they want. It's always about what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for them, but that's, as a negotiator, and I've been a successful negotiator on a number of things, that's what I would build in.
Well, do you think that the oil companies, because they do talk about fiscal stability, they don't necessarily talk about, I want this tax rate every year for the next 40 years.
Just predictable future.
Would the reopeners be palatable to them, do you think?
Well, see, none of us know what life looks like 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Anybody remember the last time oil was below $10 a barrel?
Right.
That was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So not that long ago.
Yeah.
So we don't really know what either side will want. So what happens in reopeners is oftentimes the side that didn't think they wanted them finds out 3-5 years down the road they're the ones that are happy it's there.
Sure.